There
Okay.
we go. Takes warming up a little bit.
Good afternoon. It is January 8th at 4:45, and I'm calling this Joint Human Resources Committee to order for Human Resources with a quorum in chamber. Thank you.
All right. It is still January 8th at 4:45, and we are here with the Utility Commission for this joint Human Resources and Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting. We have our entire committee here in person.
The joint item is discussion and possible action to determine if utility employees should have a different pay rate and scale than other City of Wausau unrepresented employees.
So maybe I will kick us off, and then if others want to kind of join in to help give a little bit more information. So as the utility has continued to discuss employee retention rates, jobs, all of this, we come to kind of an uncomfortable situation where we are making decisions on behalf of the utility that do affect the city and the city employees and city operations. But the rest of the council and policy body don't have the opportunity to weigh in on these decisions necessarily. And it's getting a little different than how we treat other employees. I think maybe or at least the requests are. So I wanted to make sure that we had this discussion together as an HR and utility commission body so that we can set our expectations together and do what's best for the city, what's best for our employees, and what's best for the ratepayers as well.
Thank you. Just for a little bit of clarity, I think as we move forward with this, the agenda item itself wasn't involved with making that agenda item. And at the commission, just for clarity on the discussion that we've had at the commission, wasn't to have a different pay rate or pay scale, right? The commission was very clear that we would always stay with the city, keep continuity with the city, and use the pay structure that the city has. The staffing assessment that was done was actually a culmination of information from a facilities plan when we were planning out the new water and wastewater facilities, right? So as part of those facility plans that was brought forward, we always look at not only what the capital costs are, but potentially what our future operation and maintenance costs are, as well as our maintenance needs, right, with our staffing. And our engineers that had put that together had said that they feel that we need additional staffing. So when that information came to the commission, it was determined that we would have a third party address a staffing needs assessment for the utility once we started construction of those projects. Through the Utility Commission, they approved us a budget to move that forward. The utility hired Baker Tilly to do that, and that information was presented. So not only did they talk about what they felt staff was needed with the new facilities and the additional operation and maintenance requirements that we were going to have, but they were also looking at potential budget impacts on what those types of positions would be, whether they would be supervisor positions, additional tech positions, what they were. So they had come up with some numbers as well as far as what that potential budget impact would be. You know, when we look at with those new positions, you know, they came up with the fact that when they looked at our pay scale, it was around 8 to 11% below market, right? And so when you look at the Gallagher pay study, and it was one of their benchmark findings that the pay scale was 8 to 10% below or behind market, they call it. So, you know, I mean, the studies themselves are and I believe that the Gallagher study is probably much more in depth, but I mean, the numbers really are very similar. And so when we look at the staff and the commission, we've never proposed a separate rate case from the city, right? We wanted to look at what we feel we're behind market, but for the entire department in the city, right? And it's always been that every 5 years that a wage study is done. And so this past year, was year 5, and the city did a market analysis, right? And so that's what this Gallagher, information came about. And the city council during the budget process approved a 3% market adjustment to the pay scale. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity where some of this information came from, how it developed through the utility commission. And I too, and I think staff would appreciate some clarity on how these discussions will happen moving forward as well. So appreciate that. Thanks.
Any questions from the HR committee for Director? Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a couple questions,
Yep.
Mr. Lindman. So you looked at budget impact, but did you say that another rate case was not kind of entertained or anticipated
No.
to occur?
No, and the commission never entertained that. That was never part of the discussion. It was always to work within the budget that the utility had at this point in time.
Is that in relation to what was deemed a kind of reclassification as well?
Yes, and so Ellers has those numbers. They haven't provided us anything, but the first thing that they're looking at is what the potential is for adding staff, and so that, and it gets a little complicated because it's also along with the potential for projects, right? So I'm going to try to bring all this together. So we have also applied for a number of projects, right, to maximize our grant funding or principal forgiveness through the DNR loans. And we had received approval for a number of those projects, right? And so trying to understand what our new revenue rates are going to provide us, what we can do for capital projects, as well as what we can do to add staff and look at our staffing situation as well. So all three of those things are being considered and looked at this point in time right now, based on the new rate structure that's in place. But there's not proposed another rate case.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't mean proposed. I said kind of anticipated, kind of perhaps two different terms there. But my last question right now would be, when we were sitting here in the September HR committee, that was September 11th, the chair was asking you and Finance Director Grote some questions. You both came to the podium. If I recall, that was at 1 hour and 11 minutes in that meeting. And the chair of the HR committee had stated on video that an anticipated $450,000 fiscal impact was associated with the reclassification at that time. No one contested that in that meeting when it was stated by Alder McElhaney. And then very clearly, the chair had asked you and Finance Director Grote if that had been kind of included or considered in the last round of rate increases. I believe Ms. Grote said no, and you shook your head no in a sustained fashion at that time. And then the following question, which I believe was at about 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 23 seconds, the chair had asked, so that would be related to rates, and Ms. Grote said yes. So I guess the question would be, do you recall that occurring? And if it's not, yeah.
Yep.
Those were the facts given at that time. That was later characterized as rumors in the media. I'm not sure why. I think potential outcome or possibility is just that, a possibility. It's not usually referred to as a rumor. But if it's not going to come out of rate revenue, then where at this point is it anticipated to come from?
Well, it would come from rate revenue that's coming in right now. And so for clarity, the $450,000 was not just for pay grade increases, right? Or adjustments that were looked at. It was also for the additional staff. Okay, so that was all encompassing that $450,000. And that was, that was probably a worst case, type thing. But it was just one option for a potential solution to what the issues that we're having with the pay. Yeah.
Sure. So I guess given that, and $450,000 in relation to reclassification was not contested in that meeting. I have not heard it contested in any public official city meeting that I've been in or watched. So the statement that I'm hearing then, I guess, is we didn't include it in the last rate increase, but somehow we have $450,000 of wiggle room in the last rate increase to add additional elements to. Is that kind of the notion then?
No, I mean, I don't want to say wiggle room, Tom. I would say that there are, which is why we have Ellers, right? To try to address where our rate revenues are coming in and what they're going to be as it's compared to our capital projects, right? So right now, we had capital projects planned. Some of it's going to be grant funding, right? So that's not debt service. Others, but there is debt service that comes along with that, right? We also have, in our capital plan and in our operation plan, we also let the PSC know what our future, what we feel our future needs are, right? And I don't go through how the PSC calculates that, but they don't say that you're going to look at one new full-time position next year, and that's going to be $90,000, right? They don't put that in their calculation, right? They look at an overall operation budget that we're going to have. So how they've detailed that in there, what they've taken into account, I don't know. And so I don't exactly know at this point what the utility budget will be able to manage. But I do know that those decisions will be made by the council, right? Like what projects are going to be in, what gets deferred, what doesn't get done, or the utility commission, you know? But every year we look at conflicting priorities within the utility, right? What we can afford, what we can't afford. Should there be a rate increase considered due to the projects that we're doing? You know, so those are all things that are considered every year. Yeah.
Well, a lot of unknowns there. So, but can we come to kind of an agreement that one thing that is certain is that was not included in the last round of rate increase?
Like, what are you saying? What wasn't included?
The $450,000 attached to reclassification that was brought up by Alder McElhaney at 1 hour and 11 minutes of the meeting on September 11th.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how that they do their calculations on the overall budget on what we send them, you know? But I know that we did notify the PSC that we would be looking at new. But as far as I know, what Ellers is they said that specifically the PSC would not look at projected personnel, you know, they would not put that in like in a separate line item, you know, only the personnel that were on staff at this point in time.
So when you said no on September 11th, that opinion has now changed?
No, I don't think it's changed. I don't think it's been identified specifically as a brand new position, right? So, and again, I don't know what the PSC calculations are, you know. We provide them a whole lot of information through Ellers on what we propose our budgets to be, and that's what they go through with the rate case. So, but they were made aware that staffing needs was one of the issues. Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Any comment? Yes, Commissioner Robinson.
So I think the issues, there are several issues before us today, and the first issue, and I think which was the biggest concern of the commission, was the fact that we were unable to attract and retain talent at the utilities, and the wage rates were having an impact on our ability to provide staffing, and there were concerns that were there. In addition, while that was taking place, the Baker-Tilly report came in, and we've accepted it. I don't know if we've necessarily said that it needs to be implemented because we haven't taken that action at a commission level. So what I'd like to do is try to figure out what the cost would be, you know, where are we relative to the wage classification study, and what would it cost to implement something that would get us at market rate that would address the issue of our ability to attract and retain talent. And then separate from that is the discussion about where do we go with the new positions and where does this fit into the overall budget. But there hasn't been that comprehensive evaluation at the commission level or obviously at the committee level. And I think we need to try to segment these issues into separate issues and look at it. So I would ask HR if we've looked at the Gallagher study and/or the Baker-Tilly market analysis, have we come up with any estimates as what the reclassification cost would be? Because we've not seen that at the commission level, to the best of my knowledge. And then separate from that, what would it take to implement the Baker-Tilly recommendations relative to the new positions to operate the utilities?
Oh,
Go ahead, HR Chair.
Well, first of all, I want to address this narrative that our employees are so underpaid. First of all, Baker-Tilly, that study, did 4 cities. I think Oshkosh, Appleton, Manitowoc, and Oak Creek. Okay? Oak Creek is a suburb of Milwaukee. That's 3 hours away. I don't know about Manitowoc. I've never heard of it. But Oshkosh, 2 hours away. Appleton, 2 hours away. Those cities are double the size of Wausau. So those are not comparables when it comes to, and first of all, we keep using the staffing assessment and comp study interchangeably, and they're not. Comp study, they actually looked at 16 cities, and there's a reason for that. Statistically, the sample size of 4 cities is not large enough to have a statistically correct compensation study, especially when those 4 cities look like they were handpicked. Those are not comparators to Wausau. But even that being, I contacted all of those cities except for Manitowoc. I contacted Oshkosh, Appleton, because one of them had Fond du Lac on there, so I contacted them also. And we were right there with those communities. One of the things that really bothered me was that and I have it before, it's talking about, it said superintendents, and it talked about superintendent pay. Well, it's funny because Appleton don't even have superintendents. They said that they have operations supervisors, and when you look at those salaries, they're exactly the salary grade that they have here. Oshkosh, their comp study or their comp plan has only 6 steps. Fond du Lac, their comp study has 11, or their compensation plan has 11. We have 17. And you say, what difference does that make? It makes a big difference because when you look at those things, comparing those is quite complicated. It's not just looking at these numbers and saying, well, one person's making more than another. And then again, this narrative about how we just can't keep people. We lost 7 people last year in water and sewer. Out of those 7, none of them were for pay. They were all terminations. They were just normal attrition. Terminations, retirements, that's a big thing now. We've got an older workforce. We had a few retirements. So those things are, whether you're paying $25 or $50 an hour, those things are going to happen. So I wanted to just deal with this narrative that our people are so underpaid. First of all, the water operator, the lowest level, comes in at about $52,000 a year. Okay, so that's $52,000 a year. They come into the city with 3 weeks vacation, 3 personal days, perfect attendance leave, sick leave. And I don't know how many, and these are not, we're not asking for college education. We're not asking for a whole lot of experience. The city provides almost the training in entirety. And a lot of these comparisons that Baker-Tilly made are with municipalities that have water operators 1s and 2s. So these people are completely with the certifications and everything, and our people don't. So again, those comparisons are just not correct. And even with them not being correct, we're still not that far off from what they're making in a lot larger cities than Wausau.
Anyone from the Utility Commission?
What is the agenda for the meeting tonight?
It says discussion and possible action to determine if utilities employees should have a different pay rate and scale than other City of Wausau unrepresented employees.
Well, we haven't even discussed that, have we?
Me.
I personally, I would be opposed to that. I don't know all the staff back there, but I'm sure that there's a lot of utility that I recognize, but I think DPW has to be part of the discussion too, to some degree, because as a former employee, I think it would be hard not to take care of all of those staff. I don't know how the true union departments are treated. Have they're getting more than 3% adjustment?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, again, that's not a good comparison because Public Works comes from the general fund, whereas utilities come from an enterprise fund. So if we were to raise public, they're coming from two different funds. So now we're not talking about raising rates, we're talking about raising taxes.
Well, I can understand that, but if it,
And again, Act 10 ended in 2011, and so many people just cannot let that go. We're not going to treat non-union people like they have a union. That's not the city. The state tells us we don't have to, and we're not.
I respect that. But what my point is, I don't care where the funding comes from, whether it's, I know DPW is the general fund of the city, and it's not the utility. But I'm not convinced, even though I've heard your discussion in person, I still think our people we're not at market. I don't believe. And I'm trying to gather some information to help support my claim. But it's a slow process. It doesn't seem like people will, I'll give you that information, but it may not come. And then you still got to, like you said, you got to interpret that, and sometimes it's pretty difficult to do that. But I'm kind of frustrated. I'm sure we're all frustrated about this, but I'd like to treat our employees fairly, all our employees. That would be my goal. And if I need to be part of some discussions to help with that process, I'd be more than happy to put my time forth to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson. Oh, sorry. And then Mr. Giselman. I'll let you call on your peeps.
I beg to differ with you, the difference between rates and taxes, because ultimately that money comes out of the same people's pockets. And I think we don't serve anybody's interest in trying to differentiate those. I think what we're trying to do is deal with issues in an information void. And the county went through reclass with a different firm using a different approach than Gallagher, and came up with different results. I don't know what Gallagher said. The Gallagher report hasn't been shared with the commission. I think it would be worthwhile to have that discussion. I think what we're reacting to was a concern that we were having a difficult time attracting and retaining. We've seen some stabilization in the turnover rates, which is a good thing, but I too, like Joe, want to make sure that we're competitive, whether it's union or non-union. I don't think that being a member of a union or a non-union member necessarily helps you with attraction or retention. I think it's where you are in market and how competitive you are in the work environment, and a number of factors that go into making a place a desirable place to work. So how do we get at a situation where we can have an effective evaluation of where we are relative to current conditions, what that cost is, and how we would go about paying for it? Because I don't think at the commission level that we've had that discussion. I think we need to have that discussion. We owe it to the employees, and we owe it to, more importantly, the taxpayers to have that discussion and have that better understanding of where we're going. So what process can we use, and what's the authority of the commission? I too share the concern that we should not have differential pay scales for people that work in Department of Public Works versus utility, because they are both providing very vital services to the city, and they're one of the public doesn't perceive a difference. So I think we need to be careful not to create differential pay scales, but we need to be at market.
Again, who's creating that market? You know, you keep talking about, well, we're not, you know, just out of gist, I got an email from one of the superintendents that was, again, look at our pay scale compared to this national, and the things that they were pulling from Colorado and California, that's not relevant to Wausau. And then I showed the mayor about an HR job that paid a deputy director that paid $220,000 a year. So I figured that plus 10% ought to be good for me. It doesn't work that way. You can use national rates, but you have to also put they deal with those in a statistical manner. You can't. That national rates are never a good comparison when it comes to local. Especially if you're comparing, because California and places like that on the East Coast, those are outliers. That's not what most people make. And it artificially inflates that rate.
Okay, Gary's next. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you. Isn't it time, I think the original Gallagher was 5 years ago. I think we're just about ready. I do believe we're about ready for a full wage study because the last Gallagher was just a compensation plan. What they did was agree to state the 3%. That was a short-term thing that we did in the fall of 2020 to sort of catch up. But I think that it's time. I'm sure it's 5 years, and I think the plan was 5 years ago that every 5 years we do this full report. And I think that's the only way after 5 years for everybody to become on the same playing field. Becky, I don't mean to but I'm just trying to recall that it was 2019 that the last full Gallagher report, when they did everything, comparing and job descriptions and the whole full report, and I think we are in need of that today. Living through COVID and all that, I think that we need a full comprehensive study with regard to who we are today. And I want to be fair. I want to be fair to all the employees also. But I think if there's a need for that full report in 2024, I will be in support of that, because I think that that's one way to, after 5 years, to bring equality across the board to all the employees of the city of Wausau. I don't. We can't act on that today. It's certainly not. But that's where I will be. That's where I would like the city to go this year, so that we can if there's inequalities, let's find them out, and let's bring equality into the city.
Okay, can I answer that? Yeah, okay. First of all, we keep talking about a complete compensation study. Those, and I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to contact some compensation specialists. What you're talking about is done every 8 to 10 years, not every 3 to 5 years. Because what you're talking about is doing CPQs, getting the job grades and all of that stuff together. You don't do that. You know how expensive? That's almost $100,000 to get that done, okay? So you spent $100 on that. They've spent $40. We spent $24 on ours. That's a lot of money, and they're going to give you pretty much the same information. I don't know that the citizens have an appetite for that also. But I've heard that again about, oh, we need a complete. On this Gallagher study, we ask every supervisor, give us job descriptions, tell us what's changed. We got an email from the Public Works Department that basically said, we're good, we'll do our own thing. And because I've got that email right here.
So I was given 2 weeks to look through 42 job descriptions, and that wasn't going to happen. And so we were looking at the utility and otherwise, and the only thing that was done last year was a market analysis. So the wage study was supposed to be done every 5 years. That's what the handbook says. That was the direction. That's what employees are expecting. We're in year 6 right now. And so the last wage study was actually done in 2018 and began implementation in 2019. So, you know, if I'm happy to look through our job descriptions, but I think giving me a week and a half to 2 weeks to do it with over 40 job descriptions was not practical.
Well, you have 2 superintendents, you have supervisors, and all those things.
So
and the
everything
answer,
has
no,
to
no,
get
let me
written.
finish. The
Everything
answer
has to
was
be
we
talked
got
about.
I just want to
and
make sure
reviewed.
we're kind of staying
But the answer
cordial
that
here.
was given in the email that I have on my computer is, we have this. We're going to work with our study.
So maybe instead of looking at the past, we can look forward. So some of the things that I heard us talking about is that maybe there is that knowledge gap of both our utility commission and our council and HR committee. Is there an opportunity where we can come together and maybe, I mean, I don't want to sign everyone up for a whole new study on this, but it sounds like we have a couple different reports we can look at, both Gallagher and the Baker Tilly, and probably it sounds like looking at that rate case that we made and kind of understanding more about what that should be covering. We don't even have a full year with those new rates. Is there an opportunity where we come together and we kind of have a, I'm going to call it a task force, but we can call it something else, to analyze and make recommendations on those employee pay scales, maybe even department by department, but we would maybe do utility first. Would that be acceptable? Is that something that people, members of these committees would be willing to commit to?
Go ahead, Tom.
In short, no. And I'd like to start with, you can't understand the present and certainly not predict the future if you don't even analyze the past. And I had the ability to ask the Public Works Director some questions toward the beginning of the meeting, and I'd like to now address those and some inconsistencies with statements that were made to the Human Resources Committee. And I think unless we actually start with a set of facts, different opinions are fine. That's healthy in a democracy. What is not okay is to have different facts and especially different answers from the same department heads over a few month period. So I'd like to address that in a minute, as well as some comments that were brought up by members of these bodies today. You know, in terms of Act 10 and disparities with represented and non-represented employees, whatever the state may allow or the flexibility it gives, you know, I find that we must, you know, that legislation was union busting baloney that was meant to divide workers, and we have the ability here in town to not let that dictate kind of just or unjust policy decisions when it comes to human resources matter. So I look forward to seeing all workers treated fairly, even in the face of bogus state legislation like Act 10. And when it comes to the difference between rates and taxes, it was stated it's all coming out of the pockets of the same people. It's not important or significant. It's highly significant. It's critically significant. And in the civic realm, it's literally a life and death matter. Okay, so when you're talking about fees or uniform charges that are not based on things like income or even to some degree property taxes based on land possession, because there is an association sometimes of the type of land or property someone can afford and the taxes they may be able to afford. With water, that's out the window. They're completely different. That is an element and a service that's necessary to sustain sustain life. So we must keep that in mind with policy and get away from this regressive taxation is okay type attitude. It screws the poor, the middle class, the working class, and it hurts people who can't afford it already. So there's a big difference. It's germane to this item because you can't look at pay rates and scales unless you're looking at where the money is to fund those pay rates and scales. So it's inherently germane today. There's a big difference. We shouldn't be using our rates recklessly. It will impact people's lives and health. But back to facts, because I feel like we really got away earlier. The fact of the matter is, and this is undisputed, it's on video. I'd encourage everyone here and the public and the media, everyone, September 11th, Human Resources meeting at 1 hour and 11 minutes. Our chair of HR gave an estimate of a $450,000 fiscal impact on quote unquote reclassification. It was asked to the Public Works Director and the Finance Director, was that included in the last rate increase round? The Finance Director verbally said no. Mr. Lindman shook his head no for about 10 seconds. I think it was clear the answer was no. The HR chair then went on to ask, this is about rates then, it's tied to rates. The answer from the Finance Director was yes. So those are the facts of the matter as they occurred on video and camera. And I mean, to not recognize that today, the answers that I got that, earlier, some of them were inconsistent. And unless we can go back and get some accuracy, and I'd like to, the council then deserves an email or memo from those department heads saying if those answers are not currently accurate, why they were told to city council members on video, because there should be a very good explanation for that. And so we need to start with the facts. We don't have them. And to get those answers on camera, and then to get some of the answers we got today, I feel like we've kind of departed from City Hall and entered the twilight zone. And when we were given data that, hey, maybe we've got $450,000 of leeway in our current rate dynamic, right there raises questions and concerns. Why do we have that type of elasticity when people are paying this much? That's a problem. And then furthermore, workers should be paid what they deserve. And right now, workers in other facets of city operations and needs, they're being shortchanged by siphoning water monies away from the utility in the form of payment in lieu of taxes and then using it for non-water related items. So if you want to have more money to pay for water related needs, how about for the sake of common sense and variety in Wausau, we use the water money for water needs. So we need to revisit the facts and things like that, or I don't even think we can have a discussion like this. And until we do, I can just tell you from District 3's perspective, there's no flexibility on any more rate increases. So just to say, well, we might have the money, we didn't anticipate it, but we don't know, maybe magically it'll be there, I don't think that's gonna cut it. So no more rate increases, and we need to get the fiscal facts because they appear to diverge from what we were told in formal proceedings on September 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. First of all, I might stumble a little bit through some things, but I want to just make sure, according to what I read in the email, that the employees would get a 3% increase. Okay? So and correct me if I'm wrong, if the employees would get a 3% increase, I'm just looking at what some of the current pay is for Wausau, it's a joke. It amounts to still absolutely nothing. It's actually, as far as I'm concerned, an insult to the workers and the employees. And I feel at this point there's 3 issues with our pay matrix. First, it's not competitive. Wages are generally low across the board. Second, our jobs are not grouped properly within the pay grades. One example would be our distribution staff placed in the same grade as the customer service staff at the front counter in City Hall. Both positions are grade 19. Third, our jobs within the utility are compressed into just a couple of grades. Distribution is 19, plant operator and techs are 18, and senior techs are 17s. That leaves very little room for pay increases when employees take on extra roles or responsibilities, with the grades being that close together. An additional note, these studies are all over a year old already. We've been dancing around this, and I just feel that we need to come to a conclusion that we do something to reward our employees with the money that they so richly deserve. I don't know if our HR director checked with any of the surrounding cities or towns or areas, but from what I understand, a lot of our people have left to go to some of these surrounding areas and towns and villages because of the fact that they are being paid more. And I see the HR director is laughing.
No, I'm
and
not
that's
laughing. I'm
very
just saying
fine.
everyone says that, but no one gives me proof.
Well, all I'm going to say, Mr. Henderson, I don't think from every time we've been together with you up there, and you're a nice guy, but you're very negative. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, you shoot it down. And I'm telling you, if we can't, and for example, I'm going to use the water department, if we don't have the employees to run this department, there's no water, okay? We need water to live. Personally, have you ever taken a tour of this water facility yet? I don't believe you have.
No.
I think you really need to take a tour of this facility, and I'd be more than happy to accompany you for you to see exactly what is involved. And perhaps a lot of this negativism that you have may go away. Thank you. And you can smile all you want. Okay.
I want to make sure we're maintaining decorum. If you want to address your comments to the chairs, it's probably better to do that. Thanks.
Any further on, what, I guess, Gary, go ahead, Gary.
Well, I'll still come back. I think I think the 5-year plan was established perhaps in 2018, finalized in 2019. I think that was on my mind when we put that together in HR and the city council back in those years. I think that was promised to the city, and I think that to gain fairness across the board, I still coming back to a full wage study. It may cost $100,000. Well, I think that our workforce is the most important part of the city. They're up at Christmas morning, whatever they need to do, New Year's Eve, they're out there doing what they have to do. The clerks deal with people that don't like to pay their property tax. A great staff, great employees of the city, and I think every once in a while, and I come back to 5 years, it's time for a full study. And I think that it may take us a while for us to come to that, looking at the finances and whatever, but I would still keep that in front of HR this year. I think that $100,000 is a cheap price to pay over 5 years to gain some equality within the staff and the workers of the city of Wausau.
My response is that I've done this for 8 years, and every time we have any type of study, it is immediately stated that it is inaccurate. And I worry about continuing to spend taxpayer dollars on studies that are immediately considered it's not accurate. You know, commission went to Baker Tilly. we have to get buy-in that whatever comes out is accurate, because the last time that, why it took so long to get, totally enmeshed and done is because people continually wanted to challenge that these were not accurate results. So that's why I have heartburn about these studies. I also have a question. This last study, was that just a compensation study by Gallagher?
Yes, it was a market study.
Market study. So I understand. I went through the first one, that one. Yes, we went through that. And it takes a long time, right? How long do you anticipate, if, first of all, we don't know even if we could get it in the budget. So even if it's for next year, how long would you anticipate one of those studies would take?
Probably anywhere from 6 to 10 months. And that's with everything clicking.
So be it. So be it. But I think we have to, we have to initiate something at some point in time. I don't know if it's this month or next month, but I think we have to initiate some kind of plan. The agenda called for, obviously we have moved away from the agenda. So what exactly what's coming out of this joint meeting? But at least I want to be placed on future meetings, the thought of some type of a large wage study. I know that there's other issues that came before us this evening that we have to talk about, and granted, but at least I would want our city employees to realize that, yes, this Human Resources Committee, as well as the City Council, is interested in the status of and the wage of our employees, and if there's another way of doing this, if there's another way of doing it, fine, let us know. But I think that to bring equality to the city, in my view, that's the only way. And if we argue with the results that they're, how are we going to come to some? I think we just have to trust the results whenever that is, and make sure that we study it and work hard for it. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think in the end result will pay off. Thank you.
I saw some members of the Utility Commission with their hands up earlier. I don't know if that still accurately reflects your need. Mr. Force.
Yeah, I have not said anything. I've been listening. I don't have information to make a decision of any kind this evening. I don't have, in my mind, adequate information about the budget impact of a 3% increase or a different percent increase. I am not at all confident in the information I'm receiving regarding wages and compensation at other utilities in the area or in the state of Wisconsin that are comparable to Wausau. I would agree with Joe's comment that treating one group of employees different from another group of employees is probably bad policy, and my initial position at least would be that the utility employees and the city employees should be treated equally. But beyond that, I'm really not in a position to make any decisions. I would add I'm also in agreement with Alder Killian's statement about rate increases. I think that's off the table, and that a solution needs to be worked out without that being considered as a revenue source.
Thank you. I think you kind of got us partially way there, actually, with your comments. It still sounds to me like there's some desire to understand the reports that we already have in our possession. There's some desire to understand maybe the budget. I know we are finally into 24. Maybe there's opportunity to look back at what we have. And then in July, we'll have a full year of these rates to understand what exactly it's going to pay for. And including in the next few months, we should understand a little bit more about the funds we would get from any kind of settlement related to PFAS. So I think there's a couple of moving parts here. But again, if there were people maybe committed to a work group or something where we analyze and make recommendations on this, I would agree that I think we should be looking at this from a holistic employee standpoint. I think that's the only way to get it right. But I guess I need to understand, does the Utility Commission feel comfortable having the HR committee lead this? Should we have kind of a combined, more regular meeting together? So those are kind of questions I have. Yeah, Mr. Force.
I think that may be an acceptable path, but I don't feel that we can delay decisions that impact the salaries of utility employees. So I would hope that whatever is being proposed would have a rapid timetable associated with it. I don't think we can take 6, 9, 10 months. I don't think we can wait until next summer. I think we need to come up with some solutions more quickly than that, again, for the sake of the employees.
I guess my question then is, I don't even know what we're looking at here. I don't, the utility got the 3% as everybody did in the city of Wausau, every employee. That's what they have right now. Are we still looking at, because this went down to 200,000, I don't know what the ask is even. Are we looking at the complete reorg and reclassification that came up in September? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mr. Force kind of hit the nail on the head with there doesn't seem to be the presence of the sufficient facts and data here. And I think to your just point right now or question about what are the numbers, why do they keep changing, where with some degree of certainty is the funding coming from. I would personally like to see the facts on the table, and it can be done in an expedient way, as Mr. Force said about not an unnecessary delay for the workers, but could we just start like maybe with the next HR meeting getting the facts, and not kind of guesses, but the actual fiscal impact, where with certainty the monies would be coming from, just the suite of relevant facts so that some of the discussion or analysis could at least begin at the committee level. I think his point about getting the necessary data and facts is pretty important. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with that because I don't think we have any of the facts of the matter haven't been presented today, which I kind of find sort of disappointing. I don't, how are we gonna evaluate different pay rates and scales when we don't have any numbers in front of us, and what the, what the actual revenue coming in is going to be to support anything that we're going to do on an expenditure level. So it's, we've talked about, the hypotheticals, but with the pay and wage rates in other communities, how it would compare to ours, but we still don't have any of that solid data on can we do that? Can we do something, and how we would pay for it if we did something? So I think we just need to we just need to step back, and we need we need, number one, we need some data, and number two, we need to I guess we need to decide who's what numbers are we going to use? Are we going to use the Gallagher study, or are we going to use the Baker-Tilly study? We use Gallagher for everything else, so it would make sense to me that that's what we should be hanging our hat on when it comes to compensation, we can't treat utility different than the rest of the unrepresented employees, because that's we talk about equity, and that's not equitable. And in the same manner, we can't spend another $100,000 on a comprehensive wage study because we just spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars on a market analysis to help us stem some of those runaway wages in other facets of employment, and that's what the 3% was that we gave all unrepresented employees in this budgetary cycle. So it's I think we're for compensation, we're in a decent place, but if there's inequity in the utility side of things, we then let's study it, but we need the facts, we need the data, we need a basis of that to make a decision on.
So I think those are some good points. Do you think this is something that the HR committee could take on as a project to look at this? And then do we meet again as a joint committee to discuss some of the things that you're finding, your recommendations maybe? We would still have to vote on it as a utility to make sure that we're, following that process. But is that amenable to these bodies? I'm seeing some head nodding, but feel free to sound off.
I've just got one more thing I'd like to say, and I'm hoping this is in order, because I'm not going to get into it with anybody, but anyone that's been here in this last year in this committee, I guarantee you've seen more reclassifications in jobs than you've seen in years. So I do want to somewhat refute that I'm a negative person, because I'm not. But compensation is one of the most complicated things in HR, and everyone wants to make it really simple. I had a professor in college that said, instead of going through a big explanation for a depression and a recession, he said a recession is when your neighbor's out of work, a depression is when you're out of work. That's making things super simple. And I think that's what we've done here. Everyone's want to say, well, I got a buddy in Green Bay that makes this. That's not the way that you do compensation. And I'm sorry if I come off as negative sometimes, but with my job, I have to look at facts. I can't deal with emotion. And in my opinion, I've brought facts to this table. I've got salary things from Fond du Lac, from Oshkosh, from Appleton, all of these places. And nothing that has been said about how we're just we may not be the highest paid, but we're not that far behind either. Our goal is not to blow everyone out of the water. And if it is, people tell me, just like when we came, well, you're only going to give a 3% raise? Hey, let's give 10. I want to give the employees everything that I can give, but I know that we can't do that and keep the same tax rate, to keep the same mill rate, because those things, that to me, that's pandering to people. So maybe I shouldn't defend myself, but I wanted to say that. Everything that I've ever done was for the good of this city, and however this thing shakes out, that's what I'm for, is the good of the city. I've done everything that I could to try to work for the citizens of Wausau. And if it doesn't go my way, it doesn't go my way. But again, the point about me being negative or not taking this thing seriously, I do take issue with that, because I don't think it's true.
And yes, I'd like to comment as well that, there's always going to be debate and differing opinions, and sometimes Mr. Henderson and I see things differently on any given issue sometimes. I find you to be quite a positive person, Mr. Henderson, so thank you for your good attitude and your hard work for the city. I know sometimes claims when you're trying to do your best for the town, you can face things like that. I guess join the party, but shake them off, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, I think, just to bring it back around, I agree. I think, maybe this discussion belongs in the HR committee first, and then over to water.
I find that acceptable, but I also want to make sure that the body agrees. I see head nodding, but do we want to take a formal vote to kind of task it, or?
For the
Yes, absolutely,
For the
Commissioner Robinson.
purposes of providing direction, I would move that the commission requests the Human Resources Committee to evaluate this issue and develop recommendations.
Okay,
And
we-
once those recommendations are developed, they have a joint meeting to discuss implementation.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I have a second by Mr. Force. Is there any discussion from the Utility Commission here on this?
I would just urge us to move expeditiously on this
Okay.
and not drag our feet.
Thank you. Mr. Jean?
I just want to be sure it's allowed under the agenda as it was drafted. Is that correct?
I'm looking back at my city attorney, who's also the parliamentarian. Yes, yep. We're getting a thumbs up. Okay, anyone else on the Utility Commission? All right, all of those in favor of tasking the Human Resources Committee with studying this issue as it relates to employee pay scale and pay rates and equity as it relates to all of the employees, but especially the utility, and then requesting a joint meeting after those findings have been thoroughly studied and analyzed, but not taking too long, can signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? All right, that passes unanimously. And maybe with that, I would ask for a motion for our committee to adjourn, unless you would like us to continue a discussion here.
No.
Okay. I have a motion by Robinson and a second by Jean. All in favor of adjourning can signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Utility Commission is adjourned until tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
She turned off my master.
Sorry.
HR committee, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stay. We have some more agenda items, and hopefully they will go down. So we will start with number 1, approval of the November 13th, 2023 minutes. They're in your packet. Any concerns? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve. Move to approve by Gisselman, second by Herbst. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Number 2 is the Human Resources Report for December 2023. It's in your packet. Any questions or concerns for our director? If not, we'll just keep it. Oh, go ahead,
I'll do
Mr. Martins.
a quick question. And
Sure.
I think I periodically ask this, about once a year or so, because it always just sort of catches my eye on the workers' compensation claims. And I think for the last year, we had 32 claims. 6 of them were lost time. Does that, in your opinion, does that feel high, or is that about average, or could we do better on? I know we could do better on something like that, but
Well,
what's your? And maybe that leads into our next agenda item too. So.
well, normally most of your workman's comp's going to be police and fire because, in police you're trying to make people do stuff they don't want to do, and fire you're very physical. Then probably public works. I think 6. There's always room for improvement, but it's not a number that I would be super alarmed over.
Okay.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll put that on file. Excuse me. Discussion and possible action approving notice of election to self-insure workers' compensation program with CIVMIC.
Yeah, this is just something that we have to do annually. It's more procedural than anything that our carrier requires that we take this through committee.
Okay. So, motion by Gisselman, second by Herbst. Any questions? Go ahead.
And I guess that's why I kind of, I ask that question periodically, is that because, since we're self-insured in workers' compensation, that those claims do cost the city money. So I guess I find it imperative that, we come up with ways in which we can sort of, mitigate or minimize our workers' compensation. We do that when we do that in a lot of, like police and fire, we have a physical therapist on call, and I think we're starting to roll that same thing out into public works. So it's things like that I like to see that we can use to reduce those claims. Thank you.
And we can also, do better at safety committee meetings and stuff like that to kind of, doing root cause analysis, near misses, A lot of times you walk by something and you don't get hurt, but someone could. You get that, you bring that to facilities maintenance, but, and it's just having a proactive approach, and I think that helps everyone.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that's not me, sorry. It's been a long night already. So there was none opposed, to make it clear, and so that passes unanimously. Number 4, discussion and possible action reclassifying DPW Administrative Assistant 1 to Administrative Assistant 2.
And again, this is something that we thought we did earlier last year when we took the job descriptions for admin 1s and 2s are just so close. I thought we had just gotten rid of the admin 1 job description or position in the city. I think they all should be at least 2s because of their duties. And this is just one that we overlooked, and we wanted to fix that.
If no questions, I'll take a motion to accept. A motion by Herbst, second by Killian. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Discussion and possible action amending Employee Handbook Section 5.17 to include standby pay for fleet technician position.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory. They've been, I think, per the employee handbook for the last couple of months, they've been doing this, and we're just making it official, making it a part of the handbook.
Did you want to say something, Gary, or was that a motion? Okay, okay. Motion by Herb, second by Gisselman. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Discussion and possible action approving request for additional one administrative assistant 2 position, 1 FTE, to be shared between the police and fire departments. And I believe this and the next one were the ones that were tabled right around the budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with this, this is a very necessary position because at least police have had a alarming number of public records requests that they have to deal with from an administrative standpoint. And also over in fire, Mindy does a lot. She's the only admin that they have over there, but a lot of her duties are IT type duties. So they really need a backup. And I think this is a good compromise for them to share this one FTE to provide bench strength for fire and also to help with the administrative work in police.
Go ahead.
Manager, just one quick question for the chief.
I was waiting for Jeremy to come up, but I'm fine.
No, and I think we got one thing we have now that maybe we didn't have at the budget time was just some input from our HR director, and it sounds like this is necessary, especially in regard to the increased volume of open records requests. And this is not, the intent of this is not to be in kind of any monitoring sort of way, but actually so we can see, and not just for the police, even though there may be some differences with more video requests and so forth, but other facets of the city. At some point, once the new employee who has been on staff and has had a chance to kind of address this growing volume of requests, just at the department's convenience, could you maybe just give an update on kind of the benefit that's been seen statistically? Like, we had this many requests at the start and it was taking this much time, and now we're able to get it out the door, just for more of kind of a learning factor for, I think, the policymakers when it comes to open records requests.
Sure. My expectation is to come before the council in some fashion every year, because this is a stopgap measure for us. I mean, today I asked for a count. We have 72 unprocessed open records requests sitting at the police department right now, the oldest one from early September that hasn't been filled yet, and we work on them every day and take them in the order in which they were received. If I look statistically at what's occurred over 2023 compared to 2022 to 2021, we are getting an additional 25 to 30% 5% increase in open records requests annually. So as much as I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you this 0.6 FTE is going to solve our problem for an extended period of time, I don't know that that would be a true statement. But the way in which to address this is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Let's do this. This is my request of you. Let's assess, was that effective in allowing us to respond to open records requests in a timely manner? If it was, and we're in a great place, that's what I'll report. If we find ourselves behind the power curve, even with additional staff, I'm going to report that, and we'll seek what is the solution to that or the expectations of the council moving forward. So I think this is a great first step, and I think that's a very reasonable expectation that we report progress or continued challenges with open records requests.
Yes, that sounds good, and maybe I should have clarified that's what I meant, not some feigned improvement if it does not occur. Whatever the statistical reality is, in the future, and you can just come back and say, hey, this is the part of the elephant we ate, and it's a big elephant, so we may need more, but at least some status on how the records request scenario goes in the future.
That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Okay, so, did I get a motion? Motion, I'll take a motion to accept if no more questions. Motion by Herbst, second by Killian. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And on to discussion and possible action approving request for addition of one administrative assistant to position .55 FTE in Community Development Department.
This is one that I really support because I think if anyone's ever seen a CBDG grant, the administrative prowess that it takes to get through that. I remember in Arizona, just the person that did the department director, her timesheet was that thick because she had to account for her time in 15-minute increments because of just how tedious the grant is. And my thinking on that is that when you have directors and managers doing a lot of admin work, now we all do some admin work, but if they're is your money really being spent well if your director and your manager is doing a lot of admin work? They should be doing more higher level strategic things. And I think with this will really give them some bandwidth in community development to be able to do other things. A lot of their jobs too, they're out of the office quite a bit. They need someone that's kind of got a home base there in that office. And I think this is something that'll do that.
If no other questions, I'll take a motion to accept. Motion.
Go
ahead.
Pardon me, Madam Chair. I'll make the motion, and then I just have a
Okay,
question.
then let's get a
after
second,
this.
and then I'll get a second by Martins. Go ahead, ask your question.
So this will, the darkness will end now, is that correct? Like this should stop when people go to the office, there will be people in the office, is that right?
For the most part, yes, that should happen. At .55, we won't be able to have that person as much as for the hours that we are open entirely. So for the most part, the darkness will stop, but not entirely.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So now we're on to adjournment. Take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Herbst, second by Killian. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.